Who am I? Well, let's just say I'm your typical American kid. If typical means growing up insecure, stuttering through sentences, dodging a critical mom, and watching dad hide in the shadows. As close as I got to college was playing football in Husky Stadium in 6th grade. I wanted to try everything at least once, just to find out how everything works. Learn to use my words to navigate life, just like Grandpa said. Make friends, make money. I experimented, took things apart. Guess I learned the old-fashioned way by just making mistakes. I've sold wine to grocery stores, driven heavy equipment, caddied on the PGA Tour, was in a band, even went to LA in my early 20s to give acting a shot. Pretty sure I can fly anything with wings. Worked in sales most of my life, got recruited to Wall Street, and one day I even rang the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. It's been a crazy ride. Maybe it's just me, but I truly believe that humans can accomplish anything if they just try without the fear of failing. Most people stop before they even start. If you believe in leading by example, doing what's right by standing up for those who need the help, but most importantly, if you feel like you have the skills to spot a fraud, then this might be for you. This is a place where action speaks louder than words, where leadership isn't about titles or education. It's about showing up, execution, and understanding that no matter how experienced you are, you always have something to learn.
We don't need no education.
Welcome to the Ackerman Daily Show, your daily dose of things you need to know, and probably some things you don't.
Well, good morning. Yep, it's still morning, I think. Yep, still morning for another 21 minutes. Welcome to February 5th. Here we are, trucking along. I can't quite, my son asked me this yesterday. He said, Dad, the days seem to be going really, really fast. Like, why is time going so fast? And I told him, I agree. Time is going fast. We're already 1/12 of the way through this year. And if it's only 12 more of those or 11 more of those before we're done with this year, boy, we really got to kick things into gear, don't we? But wow. Yeah. I think it's kind of sad when time goes fast for a kid, though, because I remember when I was 14, 15 years old, I really do remember it like it was yesterday. It did not go by fast for me, thankfully. You always get those posts that say, if you could go back and live your life again or live high school over again, would you do it? What would you do? I think I might want to do it. I think I might want to give it another try. If I could do it with the same knowledge I have today, sure. But if I had to go back and didn't have all the experience and the knowledge that I have today, then probably not. But anyway, did not have a broadcast yesterday. We had a little bit of a snow flurry here in Washington. When it snows in Washington State, it's kind of pathetic. People lose their minds. We don't have any snow equipment. Nobody knows how to drive. I mean, first of all, nobody knows how to drive today. Not quite sure where and why that is. Probably because of the helicopter parenting. Probably because I wasn't really allowed to teach my kids how to mow the lawn or use equipment or run a chainsaw. I was always told that's too dangerous. Keep your kids away. No, you can't do that. So my kids don't know how to do a lot of things that I wanted to teach them how to do. But, life goes on. They'll learn. I've got kind of a personal topic today, and I just decided that I wasn't even sure if I was going to dig into this one and discuss it or put it out there because frankly, it's really sensitive. I think it's really sensitive for a lot of people. I think it's really sensitive, politically, socially, and I'm going to give you my experience. So this happened this has been a pretty rough decade for me, but, this happened kind of between Well, I mean, I guess it's really just kind of the past 10 years. About 2015, I think, is when everything just kind of started to go south. Trump got elected in 16, which sparked all sorts of chaos and controversy for me, more than I ever would have expected. I think there's probably a few people who can relate with me on that one. But this is something that I really do believe that we need to get some discussion going. And, this is still early. I've been doing this for, I think this is now the 8th broadcast. I'm going to stick to it. I'm not giving this up. There is too much knowledge and experience that I have acquired over the last 50 years that I want to give out. I think it'll help. I'm going to take a lot of haters. I'm going to have a lot of people probably criticizing me on levels that maybe I've never seen. And I've seen some pretty high levels of criticism. But today's discussion is going to be about relationships, in a sense, divorces, kids, moving on, how we do it, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. And hopefully, like I say, right now there's not a lot of people watching this. And maybe that's for other reasons. I'm not sure. YouTube refuses to let me into the algorithm. I've tried to contact them. I've tried to get information. But they took my account, which was getting, at its high point, 13,000 views a day. Just racing up, got to almost 1,000 subscribers in less than 3 weeks. And then suddenly it just got shut off. Just off. Now, I barely get any views. Rarely get a comment. Every once in a while I'll get a comment. But before it did that, I couldn't keep up with the comments. I had people saying, thank you for, God, I've never heard anybody explain it this way. And this silencing, this eliminating people's voices. Now, I wasn't doing anything evil or mean or, I'm a pretty, how do you put it? I'm a pretty, kind dude. And what I found, in today's society, unfortunately, if you are an empathetic, kind, decent-hearted, try to help people out kind of personality, unfortunately, in today's society and the way that things have been going, we're the ones who get taken advantage of and scammed, or, people learn to play on our emotions. I just had a thought. I'm hoping everybody can hear this. Ever since that second broadcast where obviously I had some audio issues, I think everything is looking good. Let me just confirm one thing real quick here before. Okay, I think,
Hoping.
yep, we have audio. Okay, sorry. Didn't want to do that, but so where do we start? Well, why don't I start real quickly? Let's talk about what's going on just today. Okay, there's a massive political divide taking place. And if you've watched earlier episodes, I think one of my very first few episodes, I talked about, where I acquired my political affiliations. And where I acquired them was essentially just figuring things out on my own. We didn't talk about politics in my generation. We didn't talk about it was kind of, I think I remember hearing something like, you don't talk about politics or religion at the dinner table. My grandfather talked about religion at the dinner to my dad's father, the more conservative side of the family that I kind of they're the side of the family that kind of gave me the belief that, I just don't think this hardcore religious direction is my thing, and really it wasn't for anything more other than it was just extraordinarily judgmental, and the shame and the fear mongering, the telling you you're going to go to hell. And I mean, really, it was just horrible. I just didn't want anything to do with it. I was like, okay, you guys can keep your critical shaming stuff. It's all you. Go for it. Free religion, do what you want. But I sought out just people. I sought out learning from people. And, my other set of grandparents, which were the grandparents that I was really close with, that more or less kind of raised me, were my grandparents on my mom's side. Orthodontics, or my grandfather was an orthodontist. His thesis is used in dentistry and orthodontics today. Just really kind people. I don't know for a fact what their political affiliations were, but I would have probably guessed, since I never thought about what everybody's political affiliations were until like 2019, probably would guess that they would have been like your Kennedy Democrat, kind of your traditional Democrat, and my other grandparents were kind of your traditional Republicans, which I don't really think exists today. The World War II generation, my grandparents, the grandparents of us Gen Xers, I think are mostly gone for the most part. In fact, I'm not sure. Is there anybody still alive from Pearl Harbor who was actually at Pearl Harbor? There might be a few. But so I guess that would have probably been in a split family. My parents never talked about politics. My parents, I really have no recollection of my parents even talking to each other. The only thing I recall about my parents were screaming. Mom screaming at dad. Not ever really hearing dad's voice, because mom's voice was always louder and always stronger than dad's. So there was a lot of that kind of trauma going on in my home. And so I didn't really think about politics. Well, boy, have we come a long ways today, haven't we? Today it is search and destroy, scorched earth. How hard can you take somebody down? What can you accuse somebody of to silence their voice? What are all these things you can do? Like, it is just gone pure toxic. And I know that there's got to be people getting really sick and tired of this toxicity, of this like just slander, just horrible slander. And thinking about that today, or actually I was thinking about it last night as we're watching Elon and, Donald Trump and Doge, and as we watch them, kind of go in, do what they said they were going to do, just figure out where the government is not operating efficiently or where they're wasting money. We can't waste money right now. We can't put ourselves in any more debt. We can't get worse. We have to get a little better. And seeing the rhetoric that's coming out now about just simply doing that job, like auditing some things. I mean, they're doing it like you would in any business. Any business that you're going to go in and just kind of root out the bad apples, you got to take control of things. You got to lock everything down, look at everything, evaluate it, see what stays, see what goes. And that's how it's done. And for some reason, everything's getting ramped up again. Everything's just getting spun out. Accusations, more white supremacist accusations, it's just getting worse. And I am afraid that we are going to digress. And if that's what the opposing opinion wants, is just total and utter breakdown and collapse over, like, we better just get on the same page. That's where it doesn't compute. It doesn't compute for me. And it makes no sense, because why destroy more to gain less? Anyway. So that alone right there kind of got me thinking, it's time for me to just kind of tell a little bit of my personal story from 2015-16 through kind of now and what I had to deal with and whether or not you think it's appropriate or should have happened or whatever. 2015, I was still working for Deutsche Bank, or actually Deutsche Wealth and Asset Management. They're the asset management division, the management, active management arm of Deutsche Bank, the old DWS funds, if anybody remembers those. Mutual funds. Well, I was kind of on my way out. If you watched my episode the other day, it says volume is really low. I just heard from somebody that volume is really low, and I'm not understanding this. Okay, 1 second. Why is my volume really low? Let's try something here. 1 second. Hold that thought. Hold that thought. Where's the board? Okay, there's the board. There's the secondary. Let's go filters. Let's go audio. Let's go gain. Check, check. Check, check. Check, check. Okay, that, I'm hoping, has my audio boosted. Thank you for that message. See, I actually have somebody who's checking it out. We'll get this sooner or later. Let's see, where was I? So yeah, 2015, I'm working for the bank, traveling. If you watch my broadcast from the other day, when I went on the walk with Lester, I kind of told you the story about what happened to me at Deutsche, what happened to me, in Vegas. I'm actually going to tell that story in its own video. I'm going to actually produce it and put together a little 10-minute featurette on kind of everything that happened that night, because it was actually kind of funny in a sense. But 2015, I was making a transition to start running a recreational cannabis business for some local friends in Seattle. Known him my whole life, he was already in the bar and restaurant business. And so we were going to see if we could crack into this business. It was something that I wanted to do. My mother was drinking herself to death, and I was really kind of anti-alcohol. And I thought, boy, if I could switch my mom into using cannabis, maybe she'd live longer, because the alcohol was killing her. So I wanted to get into that business, and working for the bank still, taking some personal leave, and ended up leaving. Ended up just saying, okay, my mom went into the hospital. She went in for a detox. Her husband, who I told in 1996, if you ever do anything to hurt my mother, we're going to have a problem. Because I knew he was just a total scumbag. And he said he wouldn't. So I treated him good for all the years that, we saw them. We didn't see them much because my mom was kind of an isolationist and probably a little bit mentally ill in a lot of ways. But she was in the hospital. I put her through a detox. Spent hours and hours with her, trying to get her healthy and back on her feet. Got her deemed a vulnerable adult. She was, I actually think I have some pictures of it here. She was a really beautiful woman. I mean, she was. It's really kind of too bad what happened to her, because she really could have had a great life. I mean, she blames my dad for it. And in a sense, I mean, he is a little bit responsible for it. He was not a great husband. He worked hard. He made good money, but he was a cheater. Every chance he got, he was, I think, looking for other attention, which I can also kind of understand, because every time he was at home, it looked like the only attention he got from my mom was screaming and yelling. So I'm not saying either one was right, but look, people have bad relationships. There's no question about it. But my mom, she was funny. She was a really witty, really super talented, really intelligent woman, but she just didn't really use her talents. I mean, she chose to be a mother, which I guess is what women did then, unlike today. And I put her through detox, got her deemed a vulnerable adult, asked my aunt and uncle for help to get her away from this guy. I wanted her to live. I wanted her to get to know my kids. And it just seemed like everybody was blocking me. Like literally, like nobody really. I was working 7 days a week, coaching football, never worked harder in my life. And nobody seemed to be able to want to help. Nobody. My mom's sister, her brother, they were just like, wow, and I wasn't really twisting anybody's arms. I wasn't like, you need to help. I was just like, hey, like, is there anything we can do? Can grandma maybe, can her estate, like maybe write a check for a couple $1,000s? I can get an attorney and at least consult an attorney, because I wasn't making money at this time. The cannabis business was not producing income. I mean, it was a startup business. That's how startup businesses go. So one thing led to another. This was probably the last time my mom saw my son at my sister's wedding, where she was lucid and like she was there. I was, kind of excited to have her. But one thing led to another, and her husband ended up abandoning her at home. Didn't tell any of her friends, didn't tell me, didn't tell anybody that she was going to be home by herself for way too long. Well, that didn't end well. Not only did we find her alone, but we found the will, their will that they had drafted up the street as soon as they got married. That's like the first red flag of financial abuse or somebody doing something weird, is literally the month or two after my mom got married to this guy back in the 90s, they went up and drafted a will up at the local lawyer's office. Now, why would you need to do that so quickly? Well, we can probably see why. Well, when I showed up to help her this day, when the sheriff's department did a wellness check, he wasn't home. He was gone. But he'd left the will all stacked up and out on the table right next to where he sits all the time. According to my mom, he was trying to twist her arm, coerce her into signing the deed to the house, or just doing something wrong. Well, we got her into the hospital. I took her home to my house, and she lasted about 24 hours at my house. She broke down at my house, said that she wants him gone, that he's seeing another woman, that just, she was bruised all over her back. It was really horrible. It was horrible, horrible stuff. Sorry. I haven't thought about this in a while. So I had to immediately take her to the hospital after spending one night with me, because you could kind of tell her body was shutting down. And I'll spare you the details as to what that consists of when it comes to an alcoholic who's finally come to the end, but it's not fun. So long story short, my mother ended up dying this time. Now, this was 2016. My wife at the time had already kind of put the gears of divorce in motion. So I was running a startup business, building that business, coaching football in the middle of a divorce, kind of a contentious one, because she divorced me because she was upset. Not only did she think I wasn't going to make money anymore, that, thought we were going to lose the house and all these things, she just surprised me with like nope, we're going to get divorced. And I'm going to take all the money that you thought we were going to use to pay our bills while you're running this company, and I'm just going to take it, and I'm not going to tell the courts about it, and we're just going to ruin you. And frankly, a lot of her friends and a lot of my friends' wives contributed to that. Did whatever they could to contribute to that. I won't get into the gory details on this. There are plenty. But that was, if that wasn't like enough to cause a person to fall down and collapse, I don't know what was. But the fact of the matter is, I made it through it. We got through the divorce. My mom did die. And what ended up happening is I was having her husband basically restrained from the house. I wrote a motion to have him removed from the house until we figure out what the heck's going on here. What are the bruises? What is this? What is that? And at the court hearing, now, again, this is, a time where I don't really understand what's going on with the political divides. I've never been like, I guess I was labeled a Trump supporter because I wasn't for Hillary Clinton in 2016. I despised Hillary. I tried to talk people into voting for Trump. I was like, look, yeah, I mean, come on. He's not that bad of a dude. He's run companies. I voted for Ross Perot in the 90s. Like, come on, everybody. Let's just. So I kind of would help, do that. But I didn't know. I didn't know how contentious this was all going to turn out. But I still don't see it. But what ended up happening at the court hearing, my brother-in-law and my sister convinced me, really, really like hard soul, really made me feel horrible. Like tried to kind of put this on me, but they convinced me to drop this motion so we could solve this within the family. My sister agreed to communicate with her husband. I wasn't going to have anything to do with it. I mean, this was the guy, he literally showed up to the hospital. Like while she was dying, he showed up to the hospital with her paperwork that was like, do not resuscitate, do not resuscitate. And he was waving it around outside of her hospital room while we were going through this. I mean, I wanted to strangle this man. It was so just overtly sickening what he was doing. Asking my aunt, like, what can we do about this? He's killed her. He's like destroyed her. And I wanted to make sure. I called my aunt immediately and I said, if there's any way, I know that my grandfather made sure to write his trust that nothing was going to pass through to this guy if he ended up, surviving her, which I didn't think would happen. But now that you look back on it, you go, oh, well, it didn't happen because he made sure it didn't happen. So there was nothing in the will like that. Well, then my grandma died pretty soon after my mom died, not too long after. And that's when I kind of figured out like, oh, dude, what's going on? Well, I run the business. This all happens 2016. She dies in 2017. 2017, I finalized my divorce. Things are starting to mellow out. I'm like coming up for air. 2018, things are maybe starting to look brighter on the horizon for the business, even though that industry was just completely corrupt from top to bottom. Literally corrupt from top to bottom. The state launched it, spent millions on consulting groups to help do it correctly, and all that money was just thrown. It was just wasted. It was just stolen. And then something crazy happened. I met somebody in 2018, fell madly in love, had a quick romance, got to know her family. Her mother talked me into marrying her. We had a great big wedding that was amazingly awesome. And she moved up with us. And it seemed for a while that everything was going great. Her and my ex-wife, who I just signed a divorce with in 2017, they were actually going to parent-teacher conference night together. Literally going to parent-teacher conference night. And thought like, okay, this is awesome. I want the kids to have as stable of an existence as possible. Maybe this is the road to do it. Well, that didn't last either. And what ended up happening, just, again, without going into details, my second wife, remarrying in 2018, that ended up kind of eventually going south. Well, it went south for why a lot of things go south. Money. The business did end up failing. My grandma died, and it could have been an opportunity for me to save my kid's house, keep everything together and regroup and get a job and make things happen. But my aunt, and this slipped my mind before, my aunt, because my mom died, my mom was the executor on my grandparents' estate. Always had been. For the entire existence of the estate, she was the executor. Well, when she died, she was no longer the executor. I had no reason to believe that my aunt, who I'd been friends with for, our entire life, but not close. We didn't see one another on a regular basis. Our families weren't tight, but I just never thought of anything like that. And what basically happened was, I said, hey, I need to save my house. I mean, because my sister and I took over as my mother's spot in the estate. So that my sister and I would technically split my mother's beneficiary amount to the estate. Well, my aunt started kind of roadblocking things. Yeah, we can't do anything for this. Yeah, we got to wait. I got to sell the house. And I keep telling her, like, no, you don't need, like, you're the executor. You can do what you want to do. And she's saying that she's talking to the lawyer. And, I didn't want to pressure her. I didn't want to come off like I was pressuring her. I was desperate, but that's just not me. I was trying to give her advice, with my experience at the banks and being in financial services and working with clients who work with clients to help them with these kind of estate issues. I was giving her some good guidance. And I even offered to pay like more taxes than anybody and, like really do things to just get my portion, whether it be smaller, early so I could save my kid's house. She was having nothing to do with it. She would not do it. She would not get the attorney on the phone. In fact, she lied to me about even talking to the attorney because eventually I said, can we please get the attorney on the phone? Like, please. And then she tried to do it and she ended up having to get a new attorney. So she was never even talking to the attorney. She was just lying to me about it. So long story short, it pretty much looks like my aunt and my stepfather sort of conspired with one another to eliminate my mom. That way she would sign the lien that my grandfather put on my mother's house to protect it from him. And he would get rid of my mom sooner so she could just take all the estate for herself and her younger brother. And that's pretty much what they did. Now I got a little bit, but she just gave enough. Oh, here, I can give you a little bit. I can give you a little bit. I can give you a little bit. And if you've ever been with a woman, especially a newer wife, where you can't afford to pay all the bills all the time, because that's what I started doing for her. She moved up here. I was just paying her bills. I mean, she was my wife. That's what a man does for their wife, right? And, it wasn't like she wasn't trying to look for a job, but she just wasn't getting a job and she was spending a lot of money. And Amazon, every dollar she took in went to Amazon boxes and her things. Every dollar I took in went to our bills and her bills. But for some reason, none of the money that she took in from a couple settlements, from some severance packages that I negotiated for, that money never went to pay any of our bills in the house that we lived in. And this is where I, kind of started to notice the difference between maybe conservatives and liberals, Democrats and Republicans. This is when I kind of started to see like, oh, wow, is there a significant difference? Are we not just all humans? I thought we were just all humans. I thought we were all just people who live and breathe and love and eat and sleep. And I didn't know there was this massive divide kind of taking shape. Well, there was. Now, fast forward to, I had to sell the house. My aunt wouldn't help. I couldn't save the house, which is essentially what my first wife, wanted in the first place because she wanted money out of the house. So I did. I put the house on the market in 2019 and ended up selling it, made some okay money, but I got a rental house and moved us into a rental house, kept doing what we were doing. My second marriage, we were going to drop in and start this business together, which was super exciting. I was excited about it. We started kind of funding that and just living life. And then 2019. When did COVID hit? Was it 19? Yeah, it was 2020 is when COVID first was found. Well, I had COVID over Christmas of 2019. I didn't know it was COVID, but it was COVID because I had the worst flu you've ever had in your life. And we all had it. Well, what happened on Christmas morning was my new wife, can you tell why I'm not married anymore and probably will never be again? My new wife had a little bit of a drinking problem herself. I mean, she was a drinker. She was from the Napa area. Her whole family, her stepfather, I think, was a really big drug dealer back in the 80s. Not stuff that like eliminates her from, it is what it is. Your parents are your parents. We actually bonded really, really strong on both of us having like really horrible parents. And as a side note, I will say, I am still in love with the woman I married in 2018. Like I would still be married to her if it could work. I'm still, that's why I'm not going to have a relationship anymore. There's no point for me to have a relationship because I was so in love and so content with like, oh my God, I met the person that I'll never get back there again. So anyway, Christmas Day, I get her a present that she wanted me to install on her computer. And, I've already had to deal with some drama locally with, friends. And I introduced her to all my friends at the country club who I have a tremendous amount of respect for. I'd played golf at Tacoma Country Club for almost 17 years. I really take my reputation seriously. I do not like, I worked really hard to build a good reputation over my entire life. And suddenly it was kind of like people were kind of talking like, what the hell is going on here? She was a wild child in all the wrong ways, in some cases. And on Christmas morning, I opened up her laptop to install this present I got her. And up on the screen was a Facebook message of her and this guy that they were having these discussions about getting together. And essentially it just hit me like, oh my God, what have I done? What have I done to my kids? And then my kids' mother started kind of pulling the games like, oh, well, I'm going to have to take the kids from you if you can't, get this thing figured out. And I just made the tough call. Our therapist, which I got, who was really making an effort to get us to kind of figure this out, paying cash for her. She said, about an hour and a half after Christmas morning, after I found this message, and I didn't even say anything. We were just like, I was just kind of like down. I was just kind of, I go inside when I get upset. I get quiet and just think. And that freaked her out. And she told our therapist that she was not feeling like she might hurt herself. So I had to spend all day in the hospital, Christmas Day, give my kids back to my ex, then almost all night in another hospital. And then when I heard from her parents, or actually heard from her dad and her stepmom essentially told me, but like, what are you doing? What are you doing to upset her? Like, you must be doing something. I'm like, guys, what do you mean? What am I doing? Like, can't you, like, what should I do? Like, there's this and there's this and there's this. And they just wanted to basically say like, yeah, that's not really a problem. Like, you're the problem. They literally said that to me. And that's when I went, oh my God, what did I get into? And I asked her that day, she said, I'm out of here. She said, okay, I'm leaving for a while. I'm going to take off. I'll be back in a month. And I just told her, I said, look, don't bother. Like, if you want to take off, great. But I think I need to end this. We need to end this. We had a good run. Sorry it didn't work out, but I'm going to have to ask for a divorce. And I think you should move back home. I'll help you pack. I'll be as helpful as I can. La da 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 da. It's literally what I said. And she left. And I didn't hear from her for like 2 days. And she started to do this. And I'll show you exactly.
Experience it. Okay. So when will you be in come?
Hold on.
Like how many minutes?
1 hour, 14 minutes.
Okay. When you get into come, park a couple blocks away where you're safe and give us a call and let us know where you're parked.
Okay, and how do I file an order for no harassment?
That's something that you'd have to contact the courts about. And the officer that contacts you if you're, well, I guess I should ask, were you driving to come to go collect your belongings first with a standby, or were you just wanting to go directly to file for an order somewhere first?
I don't know. I've never had to do this, so I don't know the right questions to ask or things to do or steps to make. I have my father coming up from California on Monday to load up a truck and move out. So I don't know.
So you're not necessarily wanting to go there straight away. You're wanting to contact.
I'm going there right now to get a specific list of things, a small specific list of things.
So if you're
out of the
going
house.
there first, that's what I wanted to know, is if you were going there first. I didn't want to just assume that. If you are, yeah, just call us when you're a safe distance away from the house within 2 to 3 blocks, just maybe around the corner so that you're not seen, and then we'll send you the neighborhood officer from there, and then the officer can talk to you more about the restraining order, okay?
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
That stuff started going on. Now, I didn't know those phone calls were taking place. She'd spent the night at a friend's, I think down, in Vancouver, Washington, somewhere. And she was being coached by her sister, who works for the federal government for one of these programs that is kind of underground waste of money, activism. And they started building this case against me for being a domestic abuser. Literally out of nowhere. Now, this is a woman that, look, I'm not a yeller. I go inside. I grew up with a toxic, alcoholic, loud, yelling, screaming mother. I don't like that. That creates a place of unsafeness for me. Well, all this was going on without my knowing it. And I think it was kind of spread amongst my friends too. So she, some people that she'd known for an extremely short period of time, like at the country club. Oh, Dave, I got to get out of here. Dave's getting violent, blah, blah, blah. I mean, are you serious? You know how I found out? I found out because about 3 weeks, and by the way, she tells the police that my father is coming to pick me up. Like, I called him and said, you got to come up. You got to help. I don't know what to say. We're not going to find a way out of this. Like, I'll load the truck. I've always done everything. That's what I've always done. And 3 weeks after she goes back to California, we haven't spoken at all. I find out her mother dies. Literally, just like, boom, mom dies. And I, of course, feel horrible because I promised her mother that I would take care of her. They both just literally preyed on my empathy and my need to make sure that everybody's comfortable and safe. And that's how a lot of men get really screwed, because their empathy is so easily taken advantage of. So easily taken advantage of. 3 weeks after, her mom dies, I try to get a hold of some friends of hers, like, hey, what happened? Have you heard from I can't get a hold of Stephanie at all. Now remember, Christmas Day, we spend 24 hours in 2 different hospitals. So what am I thinking? I'm thinking the worst. So I start reaching out to friends. Hey, have you seen her? Like, I don't know if you know this, but she wasn't doing real well. The next thing I know, police knocking on my door, delivering a restraining order, taking away my guns, calling me a domestic abuser. Now, I realize that every divorce, everybody wants to try to get an upper hand. You know, even my first divorce that signed in 2017, even the first one, my wife tried to say something similar to this, but you could tell, you can go and read it on the courts, all these are public documents. You can read it and now you can really look at it and you can see that she was having a hard time lying. She tried, but she just couldn't, paint me out to be abusive because I'm not. I was the one who was being abused for all these years. I was the one who was always bending over and taking the short end for everybody because that's just what I've always done. It just makes it easier to exist. Well, it's not. It's not easier to exist. In fact, those kind of things almost kill you. So she files this restraining order. I fight it, of course. I have no money to fight it. She took every last dime. I spent every last dime on paying our bills. And now we're in the middle of COVID. Everything's shut down. The business we just invested in, everything, all the startup was blown out the window because now there's no businesses being started. Luckily, I was able to get some unemployment via the state, which ended up getting taken away. It's just the stuff that I had to go through. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It does. And I flew in to the restraining order was filed in a county 600 miles from where I was at. So I'm thinking, yeah, no problem to battle this restraining order, go to court, get dropped with 200 pages of additional documentation right before we walk into the hearing of just, it was literally printed out paper with nothing on it. It was just a fix. What is this? Her dad gives it to me. He says, I don't know, just stuff I'm supposed to give you. Sure is good to see you. How you doing? They were doing this like it was just out of a playbook, just one right after another. We go into court. I give my account of what happens. She ends up and look at all this harassment, just flying it around. And I'm there's not please, let's look at these documents, Your Honor. No, we don't want to look at the documents. And she ended up granting the order. I went home blown away. This kind of stuff happens? Well, of course it does. Happens all the time. I know 3 people, just kind of acquaintances, 3 different individuals right now. One of them, my stepmother, who's an absolute angel, who I consider my mother today. My dad treated her horribly. Her boss at her school, her boss's son is a dentist. His wife is a dentist. They have a child together. They're getting a divorce. His wife made claims with the courts, the kind of claims that I'm not even going to tell you what the claims are because YouTube will just further restrict me, so he can never see the kids again. What is going on? This is ridiculous. My mother was an abused female who needed help, who needed somebody to stand up for her and say, no more beating her, no more poisoning her, but nobody helped her. And the one person that did help her happened to be, I guess, the quote unquote Trump supporter out of the bunch. I'm the one who gets smashed into court trying to paint me as a violent abuser who should be canceled. And essentially that's essentially what happened. All my friends that I'd known for years, everybody just turned their back on me. Nobody wanted to talk about it. Nobody wanted to discuss it. I mean, I'm like, is anybody seeing what's going on here? Is anybody going to stand up and say like, what's wrong? Something's wrong. So how long are we going to just be okay with allowing this? No man should be abusing a woman. No woman should be abusing a man. And it goes both ways. Trust me, it goes both ways. I have more receipts on that. I have more stories. I have more things I could tell you. But my goal here is not to paint women in a bad light. My goal is not to paint really anybody in a bad light. What my goal is to push people up, help people build confidence, accomplish more, do more, be better. That's always been my goal. But it seems like everybody has just been wanting to push everybody else down, accuse them of things they're not like legitimately responsible for. And that there needs to be a change. The quick and dirty how this all ended, the restraining order was granted. I had an inclination that if I told her that I wanted to maybe get back together, that she might consider dropping the restraining order. Because I'd read somewhere that women like this sometimes use restraining orders as a punishment for rejecting them or discarding them or whatever it is. And it worked. I mean, I still loved her. I would have been with her. I mean, I was still attracted to her. I still loved her. I still wanted our marriage to work. I just knew it couldn't, because you can't make something work with somebody when you're the only adult. You just can't. I mean, can anybody relate with me with that one? I mean, there's got to be some stories out there. So I forget when exactly it happened, but I think it was right after the election. I ended up going down to California to visit, convinced her to drop the order. I said, look, I can't come visit you unless you drop this restraining order. I am not going to come and see you and hang out with a restraining order out there, knowing that you can just have me arrested at any point. Like you did it once or tried to do it once. Why wouldn't you do it again? So she did. She dropped the order. And during COVID, I helped her build a shed at her, her new rental, and helped her build her business, and really just like waited on her hand and foot, made dinner, cleaned the house, did the laundry. My son came down to visit, off and on into California. And I spent probably almost a year down there until I dropped my son off at the Sacramento airport in July, I think of 21. And I got rear-ended in Napa. A guy driving a Ford F-150 with 3,000 pounds in the bed hit me doing 50 miles an hour while I was at a stoplight. Rear-ended, totaled my car, destroyed my back. Already hadn't even settled my other two claims that I had going for my other two accidents that happened in 2017 and 2018, where I was crushed when my son and I were crushed in a car accident head on. So like, I got what I wanted. I got the restraining order dropped, still lost my father's collector firearms because they were in Hawk, and I couldn't get them out of Hawk because I had a domestic violence order on me. So the long and short of it is, we can't be having this. The lawfare. Then, in I think 21, I'd had enough. I couldn't take it anymore. I was just being screamed at, and all of her friends were just trying to destroy me. For what? Because I wanted to talk? I mean, all of her bridesmaids and I, we all had great communicative, open relationships. Like I've always been transparent. Always been a communicator. It's why I've had success. But now, suddenly none of them will even speak to me. In fact, if we run into them, I ran into one of them with her down, while I was down there in 2020. And when we walked up, she pretended to be afraid of me. She literally pretended to be afraid and like walk away like, oh, I gotta go, I'm afraid. It's just the drama is unbelievable. And this is where I'm going, okay, now I'm watching Trump and everything that's happening in the media and on TV, and I'm seeing this lawfare against him and these false accusations against him. And like, seriously, this is what we've resorted to, is just allowing, and really just allowing women to destroy a man, destroy him with a false accusation. I hightailed it home from California as soon as I could. My case hadn't settled yet. And the abuse and the negativity and the toxicity that I had to endure to drop that restraining order. And I still love her. I do. Trust me. It's, I know who she is on the inside. I know who else she is when she's in a certain state. So don't get me wrong. I'm not telling this story because I hate this woman. I do. I truly love her. I wish that she would hear that and heal. And I had to stop believing that love heals everything, because it doesn't. It doesn't heal anything. It makes a lot of things worse if you're not healed. But when I got back, I was in such bad shape. Such bad shape. The one thing that saved my life, I had no idea that Johnny Depp and Amber Heard were in that very similar situation. I mean, their case was obviously way over the top, like Hollywood. And, you know, my wife and I's case of just like was so minor leagues compared to theirs. But the fact that he was standing up for himself and men, that like helped me survive that and get through it. And now I can just see it. I mean, you wonder why I am not ever going to be in another relationship. That's the reason. I am completely and utterly destroyed. And like total attempted takedown, an attempted cancellation in my own hometown, spreading these things, these rumors, these, you know, Dave's violent, Dave's a drug addict, Dave's this, like that stuff ruins people. And I think it needs to be stopped, completely eliminated. If it is proven that you filed a false domestic violence order on anybody, man on a woman, woman on a man, she on a he, whatever, that there should be mandatory, you know, serious consequences. Maybe, you know, maybe a month in jail. And don't give me this bullshit about, oh, we're going to disarm the real victims. Well, you did disarm the real victim. My mother was a real victim, and her liberal, you know, virtue supporters. And I hate calling them Democrats, because I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat, but it seems like it's Republicans and Democrats here. All the Democrats in this freaking state that I knew, who I always had great relationships with and communication, and like we could talk, argue, discuss anything. Suddenly, all of those people just turn their backs on me. Yeah, screw him. He's a Trump supporter. He's a below humanness. People who have the capability to do that, I think, are the most shallow, inept, incapable, insecure people there are. And that's frankly why none of her family wanted to communicate with me anymore, because they are afraid of my confidence. They are afraid of my energy being able to see through them, because I can see through them. And trust me when I say, when you deal with as much neglect and abuse and toxicity and garbage that I've dealt with throughout the course of my life, I can spot a narcissistic, abusive, fake, drama-ridden piece of human. I can spot them from across the room. It's just, it's kind of the gift you get when you have to go through this stuff. And I'm really I'm sad my kids had their childhood taken away. They did. They had their childhood taken away. My wife originally filed for divorce because she was a jealous person. I was running this business. I brought in this really cute girl from the golf club to work sales for us. She was going to kill it. She was charismatic. I wanted to mentor her to be our lead salesperson. And my wife was jealous, and she heard that I was like going on ride-alongs with her, and she didn't want me to do that. She thought that I was a cheater. Well, I just made this poor girl quit her job. I cannot fire her because my wife is jealous. Like, no, I can't do that. Well, her and her friends all mustered up. Well, you should just take him out then. Just take him out. Well, I was the coach, the offensive coordinator of the football team, which my son was the quarterback. And all of this went down. Did they let my son keep playing quarterback? Did they make him feel like he wasn't a part of it? No, not at all. They made my son feel like you guys are both canceled. I lost my job. He lost his job. I have no idea what he would be like today if that didn't happen to him. He was so outgoing, so confident. Like, he had support. He had family. And because all that went down, my kids lost all of their family support. All of it. We don't even see, they don't see my in-laws, my ex-wife's parents anymore. Because of triangulation and manipulation and everybody's worry about perception and yada, yada, yada. Now my kids live in this world of triangulation where they see their grandparents, but I don't. Their mother doesn't, or every so often. We don't see our neighbors who we considered family, retired school teachers that as soon as this all went down, as soon as we moved out, they flipped on their switch, which was, okay, Trump supporter, erase him. Get him out of here. Cancel him, ruin him. Can't have confident conservatives, especially when we're trying to do all this crap. So do you see where I'm coming from here? I hope I was able to explain this and do it the justice, but these are things that need to be talked about. We need to change these laws. We need to change the way men treat women and women treat men. It is no longer just the open book, men are the aggressor, women are the victims, and we need to protect all victims by just letting any woman accuse another man of sexual assault or harassment or domestic violence just to eliminate them. That is a no-go. And it can't be. And if you think otherwise, please drop in the show. Next week, I promise, next week, I'm going to have the room open. So we'll be broadcasting like this, and you'll be able to just go click a link, add it to your phone, whatever. You'll drop into a side room. You won't drop right into the show, but I'll be able to talk to you in a side room, and we'll be able to have a discussion. And I'd like to see somebody step up and have a discussion with me about this stuff. Let's show people, somebody, let's show people that a conservative and a person who maybe didn't vote for Trump can have a discussion, and we can find a place to meet in the middle. Or even if we don't meet in the middle, just show that we can have a discussion without slander. That we're humans, that we both have a story, that we both have pain, that we both have, tragedy, that we both have happiness, that, we're humans. There's a few of my pretty staunch Democrat friends that I haven't talked to in a long time that I think are going to be just yeah, we can totally talk. We're not crazy. And I think there's plenty of them. So I'm tired of hearing everybody call all Democrats crazy, and I'm sick and tired of hearing everybody call all Republicans uneducated freaking KKK members. We have to stop this gaslighting right now. Because if you've seen gaslighting, if you've been in an abusive family or an abusive environment of any sort, you see through this shit like, you know, a mouse sees cheese right in front of his eyes. This is as clear as day to you. But too many people are afraid still, I think, to stand up and just talk about what they feel. So how are we going to get through that? Are we gonna? I think we should.
Who am I? Well, let's just say I'm your typical American kid. If typical means growing up insecure, stuttering through sentences, dodging a critical mom, and watching dad hide in the shadows. As close as I got to college was playing football in Husky Stadium in 6th grade. I wanted to try everything at least once, just to find out how everything works. Learn to use my words to navigate life, just like Grandpa said. Make friends, make money. I experimented, took things apart. Guess I learned the old-fashioned way by just making mistakes. I've sold wine to grocery stores, driven heavy equipment, caddied on the PGA Tour, was in a band, even went to LA in my early 20s to give acting a shot. Pretty sure I can fly anything with wings. Worked in sales most of my life, got recruited to Wall Street, and one day I even rang the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. It's been a crazy ride. Maybe it's just me, but I truly believe that humans can accomplish anything if they just try without the fear of failing. Most people stop before they even start. If you believe in leading by example, doing what's right by standing up for those who need the help, but most importantly, if you feel like you have the skills to spot a fraud, then this might be for you. This is a place where action speaks louder than words, where leadership isn't about titles or education. It's about showing up, execution, and understanding that no matter how experienced you are, you always have something to learn.